Welcome everyone to today's Meet the Candidates Forum. I'm Peter Morrison with the Nantucket Civic League. We're delighted to host this forum, the second of our two annual forums to promote informed citizen participation in community affairs. The Civic League represents 25 neighborhood area associations with approximately 2,000 dues-paying families. Today's program is designed to inform you, today's attendees, and also a much larger audience of island residents who are going to be viewing it live and also viewing it on demand in the coming days. And we're very grateful to NCTV 18 for making this possible. I'm now going to turn the program over to our moderator, Civic League President, Co-President Charles Stott, to introduce today's speakers.
Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for coming out on such a beautiful day. I'm Charles Stott, your moderator. Today's program is designed to inform you who've attended, and also many more voters who are watching now and can view subsequent rebroadcasts on Nantucket Cable Television Channel 18. Thanks to all the candidates for committing the time and the energy to seek public office, and if elected, to serve the citizens of Nantucket. You'll hear first from the 6 candidates for 2 seats on the Select Board, and then from the 3 candidates running for a seat on the Planning Board, and the 2 candidates vying to serve on the Land Bank Commission. We've allocated 2 minutes for each candidate to present their qualifications for office and positions on issues. And then we'll have questions from our 2 panelists to which each candidate can respond. Following that, I'll ask candidates to respond to written questions from the audience. Please submit your questions in writing on an index card. Just raise your hand at any time, and our volunteers situated around the room will provide you with a pen and an index card, and then deliver your questions to the moderator. At the end, each candidate will make a brief closing statement. First, though, let me introduce our 2 panelists who will be questioning the candidates. Former State Representative Tim Madden and former School Committee Chair Melissa Murphy. Civic League Co-President Peter Morrison will act as our timekeeper today. Following a long tradition, Peter will ring our venerated bell to signal each candidate when their allotted time is up. Jane Lamb, our timekeeper for many years, who was fondly known as the unofficial mayor of Wawinut, used this very bell in her kindergarten class in the 1950s. We keep it in service to honor the Civic League's tradition of service. And its distinctive ring, which you've just heard, is both polite and, we hope, persuasive. With 11 candidates invited, and in fairness to the other candidates, it is essential that candidates respect the time limitations. I'll give candidates a few seconds to wrap up, but if necessary, we have the ability to turn off the microphones. Speaking of which, please lean into the microphones when you speak. I'll now invite our 6 candidates for Select Board to begin their opening statements, and we'll begin with incumbent Matt Fee. Matt?
I hope you get a picture of this. Tell Jason I'm almost in his seat. I've been involved in government since the mid-90s, probably before some of these guys were even in school. Initially, I ran claiming I wasn't a politician, which is ironic now because I'm the longest-serving member. I realize government moves at its own speed. In politics, building consensus toward common goals is critical to achieve meaningful, lasting change. I've been fortunate to be involved in the One Big Beach creation, Community Preservation Act adoption, covenant home formation, and yearly additional employee pension funding, which I initiated as a FinCom member. Fortunately, we still fund it. There's still plenty to do, creating affordable housing that's fair to both recipients and taxpayers, adopting compact community human resources, best practices, improving transportation options, encouraging historic preservation, preserving water quality, planning long-term for sea level rise, targeting energy self-sufficiency, and understanding the costs of major decisions before they are adopted, basically applying fiscal discipline and common sense to continue to improve the management and quality of life on Nantucket. I enjoy reading and researching, so the job isn't ever boring to me. I bring experience, vision, and financial acumen to the Select Board. I almost messed up. As a small business owner, 59-year native, and student of Nantucket history, I feel our past should inform our future. If we take care of Nantucket, it will take care of all of us. I vow to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And next we'll hear from candidate Christy Ferrantella. Chrissy?
Good afternoon. I'm Christy Ferrantella, and I'm a Nantucket native going back several generations down the Flaherty and Reese line. I'm a Nantucket High graduate with a master's degree in economics. I've worked as an economist for the U.S. government, supporting federal policymaking in D.C. I believe this experience will provide me with the ability to analyze and approach the problems affecting our community and provide data-driven solutions. In 2016, I returned home with my husband, Ben, to contribute my expertise and experience to my home community. I got to work with the Nantucket Data Platform to answer the decades-old question of how many people are on Nantucket. This data continues to be used by our town and decision makers. I'm running because I recognize that a Nantucket native with the experience of an economist can strengthen our select board, not just by voicing your concerns as citizens, but by formulating data-driven and practical solutions. We need practical solutions to our big issues, such as transportation and affordable housing. I've had firsthand experience in the affordable housing problem. Ben and I are two working professionals, both natives to the island, extensive networks, and still could not find affordable year-round housing. While the affordable housing is on the minds of many, I know there are several other issues, and the Select Board has many roles and responsibilities. I have the professional experience to analyze and approach these complex problems. I'm currently the chair of the Scholarship Committee for the town, and I get to hear essay after essay of our Nantucket High School graduates wanting to return back to the community, to give back to the community that gave so much to them. And I hear this, I felt this, but I fear that they won't be able to move back. I know how hard it was to come back here. I believe we owe it to our future generations and our current residents to make Nantucket a viable and sustainable place to live year-round. I know this community, I grew up in this community, I want to preserve this community, and I also want to see us grow and invest in our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Tobias Glidden.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this lovely afternoon. So I'm Tobias Glidden, and I'm running for the Board of Selectmen for a couple of reasons. One of the main one is I'm the most qualified candidate when it comes to dealing with our affordable housing crisis. That's why I put forward Article 37, which aims to create affordable housing spread out across the island. I don't think it's enough to talk about these things and advocate for them. It's about having a record of taking action on this crucial issue. Right now, we lose about a third of all homes that are sold each year go from year-round to seasonal housing. So we're constantly losing our year-round community. So just like places like Hawaii, Vail, the Hamptons, we're losing the fabric of our community, and so we need someone who has the expertise and the history of dealing with the affordable housing crisis to move us forward. When it comes to the climate crisis we're facing, right now we're going to see 26 inches of sea level rise by the end of the century. That's at a minimum. We're going to see 5 meters at a maximum. It's not enough to talk about this issue. You need to take action. That's why I started the Shanty, which is a showroom located right next to the juice bar, which educates people about renewable energy. That's why I run a solar company on island, and that's why I walked here today. It's not enough to talk about these things. Leadership and vision for our community is practicing the life that you believe everyone in the community needs to carry out. We have a great history of Nantucketers of lighting the streets of London with whale oil. We have a great history of supporting African Americans in an equal society on Nantucket. We have a great history of supporting women in our community. What we are lacking now is a failure to think big, have a big vision to solve problems on Nantucket, And I want to bring that to the table. I have experience from being on the board, and I have experience making tough decisions that I will bring to the Board of Selectmen. Lastly, I think something that's crucially important that we fail to talk about, right now we have no hospice care on Nantucket. If you need hospice, you need someone to come and take care of you. Right now, you have to fly off island. Secondly, when it comes to mental health, I would like to double it. The level of funding the town is currently funding for mental health. We constantly hear issues through the contract review committee like, oh, we can't afford to pay for an ambulance to get someone off island. Nantucketers take care of their own, and as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I will make sure that everybody gets a fair shot at being involved in this beautiful, amazing community we have and providing a vision for Nantucket that provides housing, that deals with climate change, provides mental health services, and create an island that in 50 years sorry, just wrapping up, thank you, Charles, that in 50 years, our sons and daughters can look back and say, my parents did something. So thank you.
Thank you. Fran Cartoonan is next.
Good afternoon. I'm Frances Ruley Cartonan. I was educated on Nantucket from planned playtime preschool through Nantucket High School. Thanks to the Maria Mitchell Association's mentorship, I went to Radcliffe College, and after that, I earned a PhD in linguistics from Indiana University. I had a career as a research scientist at the Linguistics Research Center at the University of Texas at Austin. I went on leave a number of times to other universities and also to serve as program director for linguistics at the National Science Foundation. The work we did at the Research Center was supported by grants and contracts. I participated in every aspect of funded research, from writing project proposals to taking part in peer review, to sitting on panels evaluating proposals, to making National Science Foundation grants to other researchers, and, of course, to directing my own projects. I established a record of finishing projects on time and within budget. I was able to retire in 1999, and then I came home to Nantucket and began a second career writing Nantucket public history. In addition to my books, I've done 3 commissioned books: A History of the Roads and Public Ways in the County of Nantucket, A History of the Wannacomet Water Company, and A History of the Nantucket Civic League. I've served on the boards of the Friends of the Nantucket Athenaeum, the Friends of the African Meeting House, and the Friends of Our Island Home. I've been a consultant for the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, chair of a work group on the future of Our Island Home, and I'm currently a cemetery commissioner. People have approached me over the years about serving on the select board. The reasons they've given are that I get along with many different people, that they have confidence in me, and that I really know Nantucket. This is the first year that I have been able to run for office. I believe I would bring benefits to the select board as a Nantucketer, a scientist, and a Nantucket historian. If elected, I pledge to listen to all Nantucketers to do my best for us and for our island. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Charity Grace Mofson.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Charity Grace Mofson. My first taste of living on Nantucket was the height of potluck season, and the sense of community my husband and I experienced then and in the years that followed confirmed that we made the right choice to become homeowners and start our family here. We quickly made invaluable friendships that many of you know to be vital to the interconnectedness of our community. A community is only as strong as the infrastructure that supports it, and this is a strong community. But it is my understanding that now more than ever, we are at a turning point. Our transportation, housing, and environmental needs require that our leadership take proactive steps to ensure that we don't lose sight of what makes Nantucket special. The choices we make now will have major impacts on the future. People who work for the town, the fisheries, and real estate, the trades, our artists, retirees, students, and families just starting out all need our town's leadership to listen and make informed decisions with our best interest in mind. My love of Nantucket and background in sustainable residential design and development, combined with my ability to learn fast and listen well, make me an essential addition to that leadership. Attending my first annual town meeting encouraged me to become more involved in the community here. Each of us has an opportunity and a responsibility to contribute to ensuring our home continues to be the type of place we all want to live. I currently serve as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, a member of the Advisory Council for Cyrus Pierce Middle School, and I'm a trustee at Nantucket Lighthouse School. I'm grateful for the valuable experience I've gained while on the Affordable Housing Trust, where we've helped 15 families over the past 10 months. I'm also grateful for the opportunities I have to work with our young people at CPS and Nantucket Lighthouse School. Any opportunity for cross-generational sharing and collaboration is a good thing for our community. I'm committed to advocating for our youth as well as our seniors. I look forward to working with the rest of the board and other town committees and boards to ensure that Nantucket continues to be the type of community that we all want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Veith is next.
Hi, I'm Jill Veith, Jill Schrader Veith, and I'm a wife, mother, and dog lover, is what I like to say. My husband Tim is here in the audience. And we've been coming to Nantucket since 2003, and we became property owners in 2010. And I am running for select board, not because I plan to do this, but because I feel called to be a voice to fight high-density development on Nantucket. I see no leadership to fight high density. I've gotten involved with Nantucket Tipping Point last summer, and I have attended all these meetings and hearings, and I've been learning about the issues that the island's facing. And I really believe right now our greatest threat is high-density development. And unfortunately, I think the leaders on Nantucket have told us to vote for some things that we might have regrets about, but we voted for them and we approved them. And by that, I mean the Richmond development down Old South Road, and I mean Tacoma Green right here at Six Fairgrounds. And one big development is begetting another. And the Richmond development begat the Tacoma Green, and that's begetting the 40B at 3579 South Shore Road, also known as Surfside Crossing. And I am very worried for the island. I'm worried for our environment. I'm worried for our sole source aquifer, and I take it very seriously. And that's really the main reason that I got involved. And I just think it's the most important issue that we're facing. The other issues that we're facing are equally important, but this overall issue is what affects everything else, and that is our extreme density that we're facing here on Nantucket. It affects our environment, it affects our traffic, and it affects our quality of life, and our quality of life is going to be reduced if we keep approving these high-density projects. So I hope you'll consider my message when you vote on April 9th. Thank you.
Thank you. It's fortunate that we've got such a talented group of candidates seeking office. We'll hear a little more from them as our panelists ask questions of the candidates. Who wants to begin?
Ladies.
Thank you. I just want to take a quick second to disclose that I do have an employer-employee relationship with two of the candidates, Melissa Murphy, but I'm serving today with the Civic League in my own personal capacity. The second message I wanted to send was that I had asked the community through social media for some feedback and some questions, and the response was overwhelming. And I thank everyone for sending me their questions. I hope we do a good job representing that today. I think the first question I'd like to start with is the Select Board, as you all know, have spent many months and adopted a strategic plan which outlines the following three priorities: housing, transportation, and environmental leadership. If you are elected, do you agree with these defined priorities, and how do you plan to work as one member on a board of 5 to advance them? And the second part of that is, are there any other revenue streams we should be considering to support those priorities?
Okay, we'll reverse the order and begin with Ms. Veith.
Okay. I think those are great priorities. But I think that those priorities really are supplanted by the greater issue of the extreme density on the island. And until we understand what our population is, which I hope a new census would show in the coming years, the best thing we can do for the island right now is to do what's called a carrying capacity study. And that will show us, through knowing what our population is, what the island can handle for our infrastructure and for traffic, our schools, electricity demands, on and on. And that is, I think, the most important thing we can do. And everything we do going forward, I think, could be done in light of that study.
Okay, Ms. Mawson, next, the same question.
I look forward to working with the rest of the board and the rest of the town's committees and boards to come to solutions that keep in mind the best interest of the entire community. With regards to those three top issues that we're looking at in the strategic plan, transportation, I think if we want to increase the amount of people using, our shuttle bus, we should start looking at improving routes. We've also already got some wonderful bike paths on the island. There are definitely some areas there that we can enhance, maybe expanding the routes that we already have. As far as housing is concerned, we all know that this is a major issue and one that we have to take into account, making sure that we have housing for our neighbors and a quality workforce here, but also taking into consideration overdevelopment and overdensity.
Okay, next person, same question, Ms. Kartunen.
Oh, I've heard more than once from the affordable housing specialists that since we only count towards a percentage of affordable housing, a percentage of year-round housing, that we don't have to pay attention to the other things that are being built on the island. But I disagree, because every new house that's built on the island is displacing the possibility of another dwelling unit. So as we continually have seasonal housing built on buildable plots, each one of those is taking the place of what could be year-round housing. So as we strive to produce affordable housing, I think we also have to seriously think of how we can limit other building on the island, because as Charlie Walters said in his interview on Channel 18, one of these days in the not too far distant future, every buildable lot will be built upon. And then what are we going to do?
Same question for Mr. Glidden.
Thanks, that's a great question. So I was really excited when the Board of Selectmen adopted this strategic plan and went through the process of it, because when I was last on the Board of Selectmen, I really realized a failure in our government and our structure to think long-term about solving the problems we need to solve. So I worked with the other board members to say, let's have a strategic work group that we meet once a month and we just talk about long-term planning. And then through Jason's leadership, that evolved into a strategic plan, and I really support it. When it comes to, what are the priorities? Transportation, housing, and environment. That's a process that we came to together as a community, that those are the three most important things that we wanted to focus on as a community. When it comes to tackling those things, I helped draft Article 37 to focus on addressing the housing strategic plan initiative. Like, that achieves one of the Board of Selectmen's goals. When it comes to transportation, I started the Shanty, which sells electric bikes. One of the goals is for the board to get people out of their cars, get them walking, get them excited. That's why I walked here today. Leadership is taking action, not just at this table, but everywhere you go in your day-to-day life. And so that's what I want to bring to the selectmen. When we talk about one of the strategic plans and one of the key elements being the environment, which is something we all care about and love, the environment has been one of my main focuses here as an Nantucketer from day one. That's why I moved back here. That's why I'm so passionate about it. And that's why I'm going to be advocating on the board for getting us to 100% renewable energy by 2045, because we need to move that direction.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrantella.
Thank you. So I thought it was really great when I heard that the Select Board had taken the approach to find a strategic plan, and I agree with the three components of it: affordable housing, transportation, and environmental leadership. I've worked with Habitat for Humanity since moving home, and we've been working to put units on the SHI list, our SHI list. And in this, it's taken a lot of collaboration between town, between nonprofits, between our community. And I want to bring this perspective to the Select Board. I think I work well with others. It's all about collaboration. And if we want to get things done in this community, we have to work across the town, our nonprofits, and our community.
Thank you. Mr. Fee.
Well, this is for 1 minute, it's very difficult to talk about these three things. These guys did great. Housing, I agree with all three. It was one of the best processes we did. What came out of it was agreed upon by all the Select Board members. And it wasn't easy. It took a lot of time. I agree with Toby. We need a bigger vision. I've always looked at things that way, and I think this was a start of that. I look at housing, it's not just about housing, it's an economic driver. If we don't have employees here on the island, it's hard for us to service customers and do what we do in the summertime. It's not just about housing people. Housing has never been easy here. It's always been difficult. I grew up and we lived in a closet and we lived on a beach without electricity. I mean, this is not, and it's gotten worse. And so I hope that we're heading that way. Transportation, I was the crazy guy who wanted to limit cars 15 years ago. Talk about, a vision. And it was ahead of its time, and I think people are seeing that now. And, addressing sort of something that Jill said, she talked about how people are upset about the development. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I think people are upset because they feel like they listened and all this was going to be good for us. And crazy people like me who said, no, we're going to have too much traffic and it's going to be too expensive, we aren't going to be able to afford it, they didn't listen to me. But now I think people have started to realize they have to. And then the environment, really quickly, green is good. It's the ecology, stupid. If we take care of the environment, we take care of Nantucket.
Did you have a follow-up question?
I don't. No, I'll address it in a different way.
Okay, we'll be rotating the responses, so the next question from Mr. Madden will be directed to Tobias Glidden first.
Just kind of piggybacking on the last question, the strategic plan, I think we all agree with that the board was in sync and came up with three priorities. What I'm looking for, can you give me two other priorities of yours that you would like to see the town address, and what specifically would you do to do that?
Yeah, so the first priority is, over the last 10 years, we've seen a real shortcoming when it comes to, nationally our healthcare system is, isn't meeting the needs that we have as a community, and it's very expensive to live on Nantucket and add healthcare into that. That's a challenge, and so that's not necessarily a role that the town has to participate in, but I see mental health funding is a crucial component. When I was last on the Board of Selectmen, I advocated really strongly to make sure Fair Winds was funded correctly through the Contract Review Committee, and as a member of the Board of Selectmen, again, I will advocate for doubling that level of funding, because I look at our bigger community and our budget, and I say how we set our budget is how we show our priorities. If our three strategic pieces are transportation, environment, and housing, those should be significant pieces in our budget every year. And so I'm going to make sure mental health is going to be one of those key elements. The second is energy policy. So we talk about the environment, but really when we talk about the environment, we need to think about how we are constantly using energy from the mainland. So summer people come here, they bring their wealth, and then we export our wealth when we buy electricity. So we lose tens of millions of dollars every year. So I'm going to make sure Nantucket is going to be showing leadership with the rest of Massachusetts, Hawaii, California to push for 100% renewable energy.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Kartunen.
We currently provide care for our fragile elders in numbers of ways, in the home, with the services of palliative care, and for those who no longer can live safely at home, we have our island home. But It's asked with, to me, alarming frequency whether the town wants to get out of providing nursing home care. And my response is, we are an island. We must provide nursing care for those who need it. So I will always advocate maintaining skilled nursing on Nantucket. The question about sustainability is exactly how far sustainability can go and how much we're going to have to face up to the question of what can be sustained and what no human effort can forestall. And I think when that comes down to the question of sea level rise, as Matt Fee said in a forum that was held at the end of January, probably first and foremost we have to look at our harbor front and see what we can do about that.
Thank you. Mr. Fee, same question.
Wow, perfect. I'll just follow up. Well, one is sea level rise. I think it's, it's a huge issue. Toby's talked about the heights and things. It struck me when I saw a picture of the Macy warehouse, the water will be halfway on the second floor. So we have to, what are we going to do? We have to really think big about that. It may be, we're going to have to look at places like Holland and how to do it and, sort of really deal with that issue and not ignore it, not just fill in forms so that we can get, funding, grants. We need to actually, really address it. The second one, is community, compact community best practices for human resources. I've been pushing that. We've funded it finally this year. All the things that we talk about don't happen if we don't manage the staff properly, evaluate staff properly, provide, negotiate with them to be able to provide housing so there's a place for them to live. We can't have an island home if we don't have staff. And so I was shocked when I first got on the board. There were no time cards. There was no, everything was the same. And so we really have to do right, to do all the wonderful things we want to do. You have to do your nuts and bolts. You have to do your basic things first. And I think that's, I think even though it's kind of under the radar, that is going to be a huge advantage for the island once we do it, just like we did with the finance department. The finance department is straightened out. We couldn't add and subtract 10 years ago, and now we have a great, and we really couldn't, and we didn't get our, we weren't certified on time, everything else. Now we are. We need to do the same thing with human resources.
Thank you. Ms. Veith.
The two issues I care about, I think y'all heard me say this before, but the number one issue I care about is responsible development on Nantucket. And I think we're going down a bad path. And I want to turn that around. And I don't hear anybody on the select board currently saying these things. And that's why I'm running. And in addition to that, the other issue I would mention is preserving downtown. People come to Nantucket to go downtown. They also come here to go to our wonderful beaches, but they come to go downtown as well. And I would like to see downtown protected for its historical character. And I'd like to see businesses be able to flourish there and not just have a lot of banks and insurance companies and real estate brokers on Main Street. I think it's really disappointing. But really, all of this, none of these issues matter if we do not address the density issue on this island. And I want to be the leader for that, and I want to build consensus for us all to work together on that issue, because everything falls under that issue.
Thank you. Finally, Ms. Ferrantella.
I think Charity Grace. It's for Charity Grace.
I'm sorry. Ms.
I have an answer.
Mofson was next.
Which one do you want to go first?
Did you already answer?
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But we haven't done Ms. Monson. She was next on my list.
Yes, okay.
So obviously, we live on an island. Sea level rise is a no-brainer. We have to address that. It should be one of our top priorities, absolutely. Mental health care as well should be right at the top of our list of priorities. But within that, we're kind of brought back to other issues like housing, because without having stable, safe housing that affects people on so many different levels. It's affecting our students, and their performance at school. It's affecting our teachers who teach our children. So when we're talking about mental health care, we have to look at so many different factors on our island that are going to affect that. So I'm always going to be in support of anything that is going to enhance our quality of life as a community. And without high quality health care, we're not going to have a high quality of life.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Ferrantella.
Thank you. So I always go back to thinking about how to make Nantucket sustainable for the future. And right now we are a tourist economy. We previously were whaling industry focused. And so I want to think long term about how to invest in things such as municipal broadband and bringing faster internet to Nantucket so that we can have other industries that can work from Nantucket. I work for the Chamber of Commerce right now. I'm their vice president, and I get to hear about all these amazing entrepreneurs that want to come to Nantucket and start a business here, but feel that we don't have the right infrastructure. We get ideas of people that work at hospitals that want to come work at a rural hospital. We have the UMass field station. Nantucket can be a base for education and innovation, but not if we don't have the right infrastructure. Another thing I would want to focus on is our elder services and making sure that we have a new center for elder services. My parents are aging. I want them to have a place to go and have an active lifestyle and a good quality of care on Nantucket. Thank you.
I think
Thank
your
you.
mother would disagree with you.
Sorry, Mom.
Thank you. We built in some flexibility to today's schedule, and because we have so many candidates, we want to give them an opportunity to have a little extra time to get one more round of questions from either Ms. Murphy or Mr. Madden.
Well, I'll just continue the theme. Over the last 10 years, we have received revenue, additional revenue to the town from an increase in the lodging tax, an increase in the meals tax. We've also have a marijuana tax that will be coming this way soon. We have the short-term rental tax that is coming. These are significant funds that will be coming to the town that is all new revenue over the last 10 years. Should those funds be earmarked? And if so, what would your priorities be? And if not, why not?
Okay, the first respondent will be Ms. Mofson.
Any additional funds that aren't already allotted for a particular purpose, I would definitely want to see go towards supporting education on the island, making sure that our educators have everything that they need, and infrastructure. As Christy mentioned earlier, our infrastructure here can absolutely stand to be enhanced to make sure that we can bring in new ideas, entrepreneurs. I think that will benefit the island greatly.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrantella?
Thank you. I think it's always great when we can find a new revenue source for the town. And I think we should focus on not just affordable housing with the big A for SHI list and to prevent 40Bs, but looking at ways to create housing for that next tier, the people that can't qualify to purchase a $1.2 million home, but also don't qualify for the 80% AMI, local area median income. I think if we focus on all ranges of housing on Nantucket, we're going to see a strength in our workforce. We're going to have those skilled nurses for our island home. We're going to have the firefighters and the police officers, but everything down to the people that take care of our community and our cleaners, our landscapers, everything. Everybody needs housing here.
Thank you. Mr. Fee?
Oh, oh boy, here we go. Lodging, meals, the marijuana is already going to go to mental health and health issues. The lodging should be some of these things should be going back and they all should be segregated in some manner. If we take this money and it just becomes more raises, we'll be paying more people more money, and there'll be no money left to do the things we need to do. So I'm a big proponent of putting some of this away so it's segregated and only a town meeting vote can get it out. And so if you do it into housing, that does that. The short-term rental, some of those things should be earmarked for housing because, that is what's driving our demand. It's the tourist homes, the people coming from off island that can bid so high is what's causing us to need so many, it's causing the development, it's causing a lot of the issues. I think it should be earmarked to that. And then I think that, some of it can go to new positions and new, we do need new positions, we do need new staff, and it can go to that, but then we should be budgeting that to live within Prop 2.5. So it's sort of it's complicated, put it that way.
Mr. Glidden.
All right, so off the bat, I think the majority of the short-term rental tax should go towards affordable housing. I think that makes sense. It parallels with the problem. I think some of that funding should go towards providing services for, seasonal residents who come here. That makes sense in my mind. The marijuana tax, should go towards mental health. But, ultimately, the bigger question on, how when we talk about funding our community, we forget that we have a residential exemption here. And when I was on the board, I worked diligently to increase that from 20% all the way up with authorization to go up to 30%. Now it's set at 25%. And what that does is that allows our year-round community to still afford to be able to live here and shifts a little more of that tax liability onto the seasonal resident. And what that does is whenever I talk to summer people, they come to the island, they say, wow, you guys have great services on Nantucket. You do a really good job on a lot of things. And so I think our conversation shouldn't be about, what we can afford. It should be about what we can afford. And ultimately, when we talk about that, right now, we have a C+ school system. Okay, we should have an A+ school system on Nantucket. We need to put money into education. I think that is so key for our future.
Thank you. Ms. Veith.
In general, as a rule of thumb, I'm not really for earmarks. I don't think we can, that's just a way to justify another tax. So I don't love to say, let's add more, I don't like actually what the board's been doing, which is handing out a lot of liquor licenses and package store licenses. I really don't appreciate that. I don't think that my daughter needs to see a beer at every cash register in town. This is supposed to be a family-friendly island. And so I'm very disappointed with some of those things. I understand everybody always has a use for new money. I get that. But if I wanted to spend money on something, and I do, it's one thing, and that's a carrying capacity study for this island. And I think that would be a great, great investment for us, and it will explain to us what we need to do with our sewer, what we should do about electricity, or can we afford more renewable energy? Is that the right path for us? It might be. But we are not going to know that until we address density on the island, and we know the population, and we've done a carrying capacity study. And again, those are expensive. They take some time, but we already have a lot of the data here. And it's something I really want to champion for the island so that we can all make better decisions about how we should spend our money going forward and what those priorities are.
Thank you. Ms. Kartunen.
I know that affordable housing is hoping to have access to some new revenue sources, and I fully agree. The other big ticket item that we deal with in a large sense is water quality, including both our aquifer and our harbors. And I think if there is money available, putting it into offsetting the cost of extending the sewers is a very important thing for us to do.
Thank you. Now we'll move into questions from the audience. And the first question comes from someone who was well prepared. Article 83 on the warrant for this year's town meeting was submitted by attorney Stephen Cohen, presumably on behalf of his clients on Baxter Road. If passed, Article 83 would take away town meeting's power to approve specific licenses or leases for private property owners to use the public beach below Sconset Bluff. Do you agree that the voters should be the ones to decide what gets built on public beaches? And if yes, will you vote no on Article 83? We'll begin with Ms. Ferrantella.
That's a really great question, and something that I've been exploring more and more looking into SBPF, but also coming back to the question about town meeting. And I think our current form of government is something that we should be looking at, and all of these questions should come back to the voters and to our town meeting, but our current form is we're not seeing a lot of people show up to town meeting. And part of being on the Town Government Study Committee has been looking at, should we move to more of a representative town meeting where we select and appoint people to represent us at a town meeting. Right now, we're getting about 5% turnout of our registered voters at town meeting, so whether we're saying, are we leaving it in the voice of the voters, I don't think the 5% is really representing all of our community. I also don't think 5 people from the select board, I do think the 5 people from the select board do represent, because we've been voted in by the community. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Mr. Glidden.
So I will vote no on Article 83, and I think it's important when we think about who we're going to vote for, it's important to have experience. You know, I was on the board when we negotiated a contract with SBPF, and I think there's a lot of details and leadership that needs to take place when it comes to that issue. And if I get elected, I'll have that experience to move forward in having a serious conversation about areas we want to protect. Do we want to protect downtown? Let's have a conversation about that. I don't believe we can protect the whole island, and so we need to have a conversation about what we can protect. You know, when it comes to voting at town meeting, I strongly support it. I supported it in the past. Multiple times I've supported it. And lastly, I am 100% for keeping town meeting the way it is. I think we need to continue it. If we had one bad year at a special town meeting, that doesn't mean we should throw out town meeting. If we switch to a representational town meeting, we'll go to 100 people that are representing us versus, 300 or 500 people who are the same people who show up at town meetings. So I don't see the difference, and it gives an opportunity for us as a community to say, hey, we fell short one year at town meeting, let's go and get more engaged. Secondly, I think it's so important to realize when people don't show up to town meeting, that's because a lot of the community is doing a really good job running our town.
Same question, Ms. Veith.
Well, this is pretty easy. I would vote no on the article. It's 83, right? Not 82, it's 83? Is that, 83. Yeah, definitely vote no on 83. I mean, what's frustrating about this is the voters have voted over and over again about this project. And lawyers and developers keep coming back and trying to find these loopholes to get around it. Time and time again, it's exhausting. So please, vote no on 83. Easy.
Thank you. Ms. Kartunen.
The wording of the article doesn't exactly say how it's represented here, but reading between the lines, I think the implications are there. And we have voted this before. I would vote no. And as for a form of government, it may be that in the future, the voters of Nantucket will choose a different form of government, but I wouldn't look for that anytime soon. I think we're rather wedded to our traditional form of government.
Thank you, Mr. Fee.
I'd vote no on this, but it's a throwaway vote. It's sort of like, do you like beaches? Do you like old people? Sure, we all like those. We're not going to vote against it. But the reality of the situation is that what we're witnessing is retreat, and this is retreat out there, but it doesn't feel like it. But it is. It's what's going to happen. I was the swing vote on SBPF the first time. We were stuck between a rock and a hard place. The select board was opposite the Concom. We made the best of that situation. As a swing vote, the leadership I showed is I made sure that it was geotubes that could be pulled out rather than a rock revetment, which I think is what we would have seen out there. I understand. I can guess who wrote the question. I can understand where we all can. I can understand where they're coming from. But the answer I don't get is what happens when that beach erodes. then those people have the right to do what, the accretion becomes their property, and they have the right to do this, and they'll go to the Concom on their own anyway. So, so it's really difficult, and there's more to it than just a vote at town meeting. So I think you're electing us to make those hard decisions and to do the work necessary, and so sometimes you have to trust us.
Thank you. Ms. Mofson.
Thank you. No. As far as Article 33 or 83 is concerned, if we've already voted on this multiple times, I think we've already spoken. This entire campaign, I've been saying that I want to be a voice for our Nantucket. So at the end of the day, it means listening to all of my neighbors, and if this is something that we've all agreed that we don't want to support, then that's where I'm going to stand. That being said, I'm always open to new information. So in the event that I have new information presented to me that would require me to modify my position on something, I'm definitely open to that as well. As far as representative town government, I'm not in favor of that. I think we live here because it's not a city and it's not a suburb. It's something unique and special, and I believe in preserving that. And part of that is annual town meeting. We do need to ensure that more people participate, though. So,
Thank you. Our next question from a member of the audience is, how will you serve the needs of our growing immigrant population regarding housing, education, language, social service, etc.? And we will begin with Ms. Cartoonen.
That is a huge question. The school system needs the support. Right now, I believe we employ 9 teachers across the schools, the public schools, teaching English language skills. And we have had an enormous influx, particularly of native speakers of Spanish. According to information I got last week, up to 34% of our current enrolled student body are either bilingual or multilingual. And, in the long run, that is actually an advantage to us if they maintain their home languages while acquiring English language skills. Eventually, we will have a bi or multilingual workforce to call upon, which can be all to the good. We have to take a positive attitude towards new Nantucketers and not divide ourselves, as tends to be inevitable and natural, into us and them. They are becoming us, and they are most in need of good housing. They're most in need of good school services, and we need to support that, and it's going to cost us money, and that's just the way it is.
Thank you. Mr. Fee.
How would I do it? How I've already done it, I built the Delta Fields. I was one of the people involved with that. I started the Adult Soccer League. I was the founder of the Adult Soccer League. I play, I coach, I employ many of these guys. I'm friends with a lot of the immigrants. I think out on the Tom Nevers fields, there should be a futsal court. There should be something out there. It shouldn't just be walking paths and, what the people that live there want. It should be something that our community needs. I hire and house 35 of my 50 employees. A handful of those are immigrants. Some have won the diversity lottery. Some have come over from other places, and they've worked for me for a few years. And then one is becoming an electrician. Another one's building homes. He came from India, and now he's building homes for me and building more employee housing. So I think, I do it. I understand the issues. I'm friends with these guys. I understand the issues and understand how difficult it is. And it's not that much difficult than it was for my family growing up here, struggling in the 60s to run businesses and to be here. And so I think what we had to do back then, I understand it, and we need to help these guys do it.
Thank you. Ms. Mawson.
Great. I think first and foremost, making sure that we provide proper support to our educators, making sure that they have everything that they need to provide to the immigrant students that are in their classrooms. But also, and maybe most importantly, listening to the people that we're trying to help, rather than assuming that we, by default, know how to help a group of people. Taking a step back and listening to what they actually need, and then stepping back in and taking some action there. So.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrantella.
Thank you. I think Nantucket's growing diverse population is something that's so important to our heritage and to our future. I have a niece who's in 6th grade, and she's in 8th grade, and her 4 best friends all come from different countries. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that when she gets to go to her friend's house, she's exposed to different languages, different cultures, different foods. And I just think we're growing, our community is growing, and our kids are getting exposed to the best possible situations. I think in terms of supporting them, it goes back to what Charity Grace was just saying about knowing how to support them. And I think we have services like the Athenaeum provides English, the community school has English classes, so making sure that we're supporting our nonprofits that support this community. I've also recently heard at the Rotary Club from Health Imperatives, and they do so much for providing health care for our immigrant population. So as much as we can, going out and learning what the needs are of that community, and then figuring out how we can partner with our nonprofits, and again, bring in this collaboration and working together to solve Nantucket's problems.
Thank you. Ms. V.
I guess I view Nantucket as one community, and we all help each other here. And that's one of the reasons I moved here and why I love it. I work in construction, actually, so I work with a lot of people from a lot of different countries, which I enjoy. I mean, the reason I moved here was really because I loved the people. And so I feel like as a member of our community, that's what I've been doing, is reaching out and helping people with their needs, regardless of their background or where they're from or what language they speak. And I did, but I was very interested to find out what was happening at the schools. And very kindly, Nina Slade, she gave me a tour of the elementary school. And she had actually said that nobody from the select board had ever come to tour the schools, which surprised me. And I got a glimpse into the future of Nantucket. And it was wonderful. And how the schools are responding is amazing. And we should all be so proud of our community and what we've been doing. And we can always do more, and I hope that we will. But I'm really, really encouraged by what's going on at the schools. And of course, I'm sure they always need money again and more support. But what they've dealt with is extreme diversity in a very short amount of time. And their response has been very impressive.
Thank you. Mr. Glidden.
I'll just start off by saying I was on the select board when with Mr. Fee when we voted to build a new school, and so I find it very disingenuous to say that members of the board haven't toured the school. You know, we helped push forward the funding of it, at over $50 million. So I think that's important just to lay out. When it comes to diversity, people speaking as a second language here on the island, I think it's one of our most valuable pieces. My father always said, people come here for the people. They don't come here for the beaches. They don't come here for the history. They really come for the people. That's our biggest asset. Those other things are important, but our people are the most important. We got to spend a lot of time with Augie Ramos over the years, a big person for our community that we lost this year. And he always said, the thing he loved about Nantucket is we help everybody. And so if I'm elected, I will continue to help everybody. And I've been doing that. I was always been involved in futsal, the soccer league. I've coached soccer for 5 years with these kids. I just got back from Nepal. There's a big Nepali community here that I think we need to look out for, and I will be advocating for as much as possible. And lastly, education, I think, is the biggest piece when we talk about how do we actually help people. Again, we're a C+ school. We're not an A+ school. That requires funding, and that requires leadership from our Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. One other question from a member of the audience. What is your position on the town purchasing or building a building to serve as a senior center and/or community center? We'll begin with Mr. Fee.
I think we do need to do it. I'm glad, it's a blessing in disguise that it's not happening out on Miller's Lane. Why we would think of putting our seniors out there in an hour and a half of traffic each way at peak summer is beyond me. But we were thinking that. I visited Sherburne Commons yesterday, and the people there, it was an amazing visit. I recognize a couple of them from my youth, a couple of my friends' moms, and they would love to see it near Sherburne Commons. And I think that's what should happen. I think it's a shame that we didn't do it before. The sea level rise is going to affect our island home. Over there, if we can pull it together again now, should be a senior center, it should be the island home, it should be Sherburne Commons. I don't know if there's enough room or how we would do it, but that's what the residents at Sherburne Commons would like. That's what I think, the leadership, whether I'm elected or not, I hope that the leadership here pursues that and convinces the people that didn't want to see that happen to follow through and do it.
Same question, Ms. Ferrantella.
Thank you. I stated earlier that I'm very interested in seeing the town either purchase or build a senior center for our aging population. And I know that the Nantucket Inn fell through, and I disagree with Mr. Fee that it could have been a great community center. We could have had so many different resources in a intergenerational community center. We could have daycare with our elder services and different activities across all of our population. I do know that the Center for Elder Affairs is looking at another location, and the opportunity to look at the Nantucket Inn just kind of opened up this idea of where else can we look for a senior center? Do we need to build, or is there another existing structure? So I think the opportunity that the Nantucket Inn did was help us think big and how we can purchase or build a new senior center.
Mr. Glidden.
So when I was on the board, I advocated for moving our island home out to Sherburne Commons. I still think that's the right thing to do when it comes to sea level rise, building on the site. I understand people's concerns with the view and connection, but having spent a lot of time at the island home and at Sherburne Commons, I think the thing seniors want most is to be connected with people. And so when we talk about thinking big, when we talk about connecting with seniors, I think what seniors want is they want people around them. They don't want to be stuck off in the corner. And so when we talk about bigger picture, and we have an immigrant community here, we need daycare. Daycare is a huge thing that we're constantly in need of. And so when we talk about seniors and a new senior facility, I would strongly be advocating for making sure we build some sort of daycare facilities at our senior center.
Thank you, Ms. Cartunen.
Well, I'm a 5-day-a-week user of the current Salt Marsh Center, and there are three things going on here that we're tending to mix together. A senior center, we already have one in existence, the Salt Marsh Center, but it's bursting at the seams. A community center is a different initiative, and the question is, can these be brought together? And the third thing is our island home, which is a different issue altogether. I agree that it would be quite difficult for the users of the current Salt Marsh Center to go to the airport for a senior center because of the traffic. I also think traffic would be quite an issue for the same users to go to Sherburne Commons. The Salt Marsh Senior Center users who went out to look at the Nantucket Inn, when asked about how they would feel about combining a community center with a senior center, some of them said great, and another significant portion of them said no, we want our own center. We don't want to be just part of a community center. So we have to look into what each constituency would want, and we also have to look into what in the world is it going to cost.
Thank you, Ms. Mawson.
So just to kind of echo what Christy brought up earlier about the opportunity at the Nantucket Inn, despite it being off the table at this point, I think that gave us an opportunity to look at possibilities, what a future senior center or community center could look like. And a lot of the people that I spoke with were interested in exploring, what that could look like, a large senior center, but that also had other uses. So more opportunities to interact with the rest of the community. Ultimately, we need to listen to the people who are actually going to be using it. Same thing as far as our island home, even though that's a separate issue. We need to make sure that we're listening to the people who are actually going to be living there. I think what's clear is that we do need a new facility, whether it's there or someplace else, to avoid the state closing us down. But as much as I love our young people and am passionate about advocating for them, I feel the same way about our seniors. And so making sure that we're willing to invest whatever it takes to make sure that they have a high quality of life and they can stay in their home on Nantucket.
Thank you, Ms. V.
I toured the Salt Marsh Center recently, and I really enjoyed it. And it was good that I did, because I realized it is bursting at the seams. It is. They have a lot going on there, a lot more going on there than just what's for seniors. You can go there for passport services, and it's a wonderful community, and I think that we do need to keep that community together. And as I was listening to Fran, because she'd be the first person I would call about what we should do for the Salt Marsh Center. And I think that it's something we should definitely look at for getting a bigger place. But obviously, real estate in general is expensive, and the costs, are a concern.
Thank you. We've been inundated with questions from the audience, and are sorry that we can't get to ask all of them, but we really have to move on to provide the candidates with an opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement, beginning with Ms. D.
I'm here because I'm asking you all to vote for me because of the overarching issue that I'm most concerned about. And I'm sorry if I sound like I've been saying it over and over, but everything that we're talking about on Nantucket is affected by what I'm talking about, and that's responsible development. And as I've been going out campaigning, and the people I meet, they all agree with me. And they all have wonderful ideas and wonderful ways to solve this problem, but they realize that there's no one representing them on the board right now. And so I just ask each of you to consider voting for me as a voice to continue to stop high-density development on Nantucket and to do things more responsibly. The responsible development issue is, I just don't think there's anything more important than that issue today, because everything falls in line underneath that. And until we understand the density, and until we understand how to address high density, which I think I have ideas for, all these other issues that we talk about with the schools and the Salt Marsh Center, they're very important, but they cannot be addressed if we do not address density on Nantucket. And I ask for your support on April 9th, and I really thank you for your time today, and feel free to come up to me and talk to me afterwards.
Thank you. Ms. Mawson.
Thank you. I'm invested in the community, I have roots here, and I'm committed to taking Nantucket into the future. I'm running for select board to ensure that everyone is represented, from those whose livelihoods depend on the housing market to those whose desire to live in a place with untouched natural beauty keeps them here. From the people who are actively involved in making local decisions to those who think they may not have a voice, and to remind them that, in fact, they do. I also bring a voice and perspective that is not currently represented in our leadership. I believe what we ultimately all have in common is that we want to feel like we're a part of a community, that we're not just surviving, but thriving. I am committed to implementing policies that are aligned with our sense of community and ensuring that any challenges that come our way are thoughtfully handled in the most ethical and sustainable manner. The challenges that face our island will likely change as we move forward, but my stance will always remain the same. It's all about community. If it brings us closer together as a community, if it enhances our quality of life, if it ensures our children grow and learn in a positive, clean, safe environment, I stand in support. I feel like we're always going to come out on top when we focus on community. This is the Nantucket that I'm working for and know exists, our Nantucket. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kartunen.
I'm in agreement with the other candidates. Housing for Nantucket's workforce is critical, and so is action on coastal resiliency. Overarching both of these is the necessity of defining Nantucket's carrying capacity. Currently, our infrastructure is overstressed, and failures are inevitable if we subject our island to ever-increasing demand. Business is well represented on the board and will continue to be whatever the outcome of the election. So why does the board need a historian? To have effective action going forward, we need to know where we've come from, and having one member of the board who knows where to look for documentation is an asset. Another asset is sympathetic understanding of the many groups who have come to Nantucket and contributed to our economy and to our culture, and those who continue to come and continue to contribute. As end of life draws near, our personal histories lengthen. We need to be confident that, as in the past, so in the future, we will continue to have a home here on the island. And that is why the board needs a historian. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glidden.
Well, again, just thank you everybody who came out this afternoon. I'm running for selectman because I believe I'm the most experienced candidate when it comes to dealing with our affordable housing crisis, when it comes to dealing with our climate crisis, and when it comes to dealing with our mental health crisis. We need a candidate on the Board of Selectmen who can hit the ground running, who's not just against 40Bs, but is for solving the affordable housing solutions. It's not enough to say, oh, I'm not interested in new funding sources. We need to fund affordable housing in a serious way, and that's why I'd ask you to support my Article 37 at this year's town meeting. That's why I'd like to ask you to support the Green Communities articles that I've put forward for town meeting. That's why I'd like to ask you to support the 3-mile buffer for marine fisheries so we can protect our history, our water quality. We can allow people to go out fishing. I'm running for the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, because I believe we need young people with passion, with experience, and a vision for a future that we all can enjoy. A vision that includes us not being underwater, and a vision that doesn't just include us stopping the sea level from coming up, but includes us actually dealing with the underlying crisis, which is climate change, and that everyone here, for the most part, drove here. So please vote for Tobias Glidden. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Varentella.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who came today and for those listening online through NCTV 18. I'm a Nantucket native with an experience as an economist. I know I'm the youngest one running, but I don't think that makes me the least qualified. My experience as an economist supporting federal policymaking has involved collaborating with others, informing decisions with data, and assessing complex problems with an open and analytical mind. And I plan to bring these skills to the Select Board. I plan to go out and listen to the community and hear what you find to be the most pressing issues. I also feel that I best represent so many Nantucketers. I can feel for those people who grew up here. I also know what it's like to move back. I know what it's like to live off the island and be wanting to come back every day. I know what it's like to not know where you're going to be living in the next 3 months and wondering if it's time to leave the island. I hope to bring an optimistic view of our future, and I hope you share my vision for Nantucket. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Fee.
A lot of you guys know me. I'm pretty shy. I don't like this running stuff. I'm not good at it. It's hard for me to ask for votes. The only person I've ever asked is Sarah Alger, because I was told if I didn't, she wouldn't vote for me. It's just not how I'm wired. I've got ADD, and I'm a doer. I founded Sustainable Nantucket. I was the co-chair on the comp plan which dealt with a lot of these issues. We haven't implemented some of it, long story. But don't mistake my lack of self-promotion for not wanting this job again. Rather than like Facebook and Twitter and all those things, I'm running a business. I'm building employee housing, and I'm daily doing the research and homework needed to run the town. I don't dress fancy. If you want someone who kisses babies and cuts ribbons and tells you what you want to hear, then you don't have to vote for me. But if you want an independent, experienced, fair voice, please vote for me April 9th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as we switch over to the next session, for those of you standing at the back, there are seats in the first couple of rows. Feel free to come up. We'd like to invite the candidate.
Thank you.
Really good. I wrote well done. I was going to show you well done, but then I couldn't.
It's funny, I prepared so
What?
What can I say?
To me? Oh, I will? Oh, well, I've been going out and talking to a lot of people, so that's really helpful to me. Oh, good, I'm glad that came across. I can't tell how I'm coming across, to be honest with you, I have no idea. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, absolutely, it's a good feeling. It's nice. I like it.
Okay, you can grab a seat, chairs out, just well, just get the three of you.
Questions we get to ask. I wrote down so many just in case.
But you also, you never know whether they're going to address it already.
I know.
Or whether or not someone else is going to ask it. How you doing? Well, you? How you doing, Becky? How are you? Good to see you.
Where did you guys
I know.
How you doing, young fella?
Good.
Good.
The other candidate here? The other candidate?
I'm good, Barry. How yourself? Good to see you. How you been? I'm well. Good. How are you doing, sir? How's Mary Ann? Good? Yeah. How's the missus? Good?
She's up in Florida.
So she must be good, right? Good for her. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
How you doing?
Not so uncomfortable here.
Trust me. Never easy, even though you know what we've done before. It's still nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So be yourself.
Okay, we're prepared to begin the next session. And we're joined by incumbent member of the Planning Board, Barry Rector, and two other candidates, David Iverson and David Pumphrey. Welcome to all three of you. We'll begin with opening comments of 2-minute duration, beginning with incumbent Barry Rector.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. My name is Barry Rector, and as for my qualifications, I'm going to ask you to turn to the newspaper or to my Facebook page. There's a more serious message to be had here. I've now served 20 years on the planning board. I am committed to the responsibility of holding this position and know where there is more work to do for the future of our island. I've shown dedication with that gained experience and want to continue to contribute in this role. It's easy to generalize solutions. The real test is the fortitude for implementation, the resilience to make it work, and to know this process takes dedicated time. It's important to balance the needs of the individual with those of our community at large. We must always act within the constraints of facts and the law. All islanders have important voices in contributing to the past, present, and future of Nantucket's core. Each voice must be listened to respectfully as we create an island fabric that is strong, durable, and resilient. I will never forget this important role and what it means for me to be on the planning board as a member of it. I ask for your continued support by voting for me on April 9th. Let's continue to work together to better and strengthen our goals for our home, Nantucket. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next presenter will be David Iverson.
Hi, my name is David Iverson. I moved here in 1986, raised 3 children, started a business in '88 in the core district that I still run today. I've never really been that involved in local politics, like I think a lot of people that aren't in this room can appreciate that I just trusted our elected officials, and not that they've done a terrible job, but I've become involved. I was part of the core group that started Tipping Point, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of concerns moving forward. Biggest concern is really the rate of development that we're seeing right now. Increased density, increased traffic, stress on the infrastructure, and our need for affordable housing. Those are all I see as our most important issues going forward. If elected, I plan to seek solutions for all those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from David Pumphrey.
What do I do? Just push right there. Yep. Thank you. It's freezing up here. I wonder if we could turn down the air conditioner. Really? I'm glad I have a woolly sweater on. My name is David Pumphrey, and I answered the call. I am answering the call of the editorial that I read in the Inquirer and Mirror back in January, asking concerned citizens to step up and get involved in local government. I was told by the editor there, Joshua, that this is an editorial that's been run from time to time, but it caught my eye. I would not claim that it was an epiphany, but it certainly got my attention as I was idly turning the pages of the newspaper. And it struck me that I have a chance to make a difference. I bring a unique skill set as a retired art appraiser. I served on the board of directors of the Appraisers Association of America. It's quite a mouthful, but it was another responsible position, analogous to this one, I suppose, in that it entails teamwork. And when it comes to appraising itself, it's a rigorous discipline, and it requires that one be absolutely fair and impartial when considering issues of great importance to individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should apologize for my microphone being off for the last half of the session. It demonstrates that you have to be smarter than the thing you're working with. But now we're going to hear questions from our 2 panelists, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Who's first?
Let Tim go first.
Governor Baker has filed a bill that will do many things. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but there's one piece in particular that I think would be of interest to the people of Nantucket. It's not a new bill. It's been filed many times before, but this year it seems to be getting a lot of traction. One of the things that it will do will change the voting at town meeting for zoning articles from a 2/3 majority to a simple majority for passage. What are your thoughts on it? Whether you support it, don't support it, and if so, why, and if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Start with Mr. Iverson.
When it comes to zoning, I feel that zoning should almost be sacred, and to have most people buy in a neighborhood because they like the zoning, the character of the neighborhood. And to have that changed easily, which can really have adverse effects to your neighborhood, your quality of life, I would support it not being a simple majority. I think that it's such an important issue that that we really need to focus on having the whole community involved in those decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Pumphrey.
I agree completely with David. I think that zoning changes should not be easily made, and I would stick with the 2/3 majority.
And Mr. Rector.
Thank you. I have to agree with my colleagues here, and I'm really glad to hear that. That gives me a much better feel for what the community may look at. But that will be a community decision that will come forward. It'll have to be voted on at town meeting. Personally, I love the 2/3. I've been asked if I could change it. I'm not going to. I believe in that 2/3. It's a much higher bar to pass. It shows that the community is ready to adopt it and move it to whatever stage needs to happen with it. So I like that extra degree of confidence that comes out of doing a 2/3 vote.
I guess the follow-up would be, hearing your answers, and they're all the same, what should we be doing to proactively address this bill? It's not an option. It's one that's being put forward and promoted, and the Globe's editorials has been very supportive of it, and it won't be a local option of whether or not it's a simple majority. It will be the law that it'll be a simple majority. So what would you suggest we do to make our point?
A response, Mr. Pumphrey?
I suppose we could invite Elizabeth Warren to come and visit us. I don't really know. I suppose that we would have to get the local citizenry agitated enough to attend the meetings and vote for what they really want instead of just depending on the people who show up to carry the day.
Mr. Rector.
First thing will probably come up, I'd like to do a poll question. Let's find out what the community thinks. I just so we have a feel for it, and that will give us the barometer of how we need to proceed. I'm surprised because I remember in the zoning reform initiatives that have been taking place for years, a lot of these things were optional for communities. It gave them either an either-or choice, and I didn't realize that now this is going to be no choice. But that also doesn't preclude something like a home rule petition as well, too, to go back to doing the 2/3 if this becomes a state mandate. So I think there are options available to us. We just need to see what we want to do and then how we're going to proceed to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Iverson.
I agree with Barry. We'd have to draw the community into the discussion and see where the community wants to go with this. With that said, it would be moved to the select board and have them, strongly lobby the state to do away with that portion of the bill, if that's what the community wants. So it's really, I guess, up to community feedback and then move forward with some kind of activism to make it happen.
Thank you. Reminder, if you have a question for a candidate for the planning board, please raise your hand and we'll get an index card and pen to you. Melissa, you have a question?
There's quite a lot of conversation, frustration, and maybe even anger around the allegation that there's too much building and development on the island. So how do you see the balance, if any, between the need for housing versus conventional building, affordable housing versus conventional building allowed under existing zoning? In other words, how do you see the planning board's role in managing growth on the island, and what specific ideas will you bring to the table?
Mr. Rector?
Great question. Actually, you'll see in the town meeting warrant, there is a zoning district map by land area. I will tell you, when we first started this in 2005, there was a lot of density both in the RC2 and the RC districts. We've actually managed to decrease that number significantly. Consequently, in the country district, we've also seen increases in the amount of land that's available there. Overall, in 2005, we were at 8.65% of the island in high density. Today, we're down to 3.65%, and we're still not done yet. So those things are changing. The affordable housing issue is an incredibly complex one, but on the planning board, I think we've brought a number of different initiatives forward, be it secondary dwellings, tertiary dwellings, multifamily units, accessory apartments. We focus on the shy list, and that's a beautiful thing, but there's more to it. There are more people who fall outside that shy list, and we need a number of different things in the toolbox. As a matter of fact, one last thing I'll ask you to support, Steve Welch's article, which is coming up, that deals with the family covenant process. Boy, is that going to be an important tool for us as well.
Thank you. Mr. Iverson.
I think that there has been some zoning changes that have definitely been helpful. I think there's some more on the warrant this year as well. Steve Welch's, as Barry said, is a great article that people should look at. It pertains to covenant houses and family members, which I think will be helpful. I think that as a town, we need to be proactive when it comes to our affordable housing issues. Without that, then we are going to be at the whim of developers that will take advantage of the law. So I think we've started to make some good moves in that direction. Unfortunately, it's taking some bad situations to really wake us up to it. As far as density and zoning, it's going to take some zoning reform maybe to do that. And that will be done through either the zoning board, putting forth articles for town meeting. But first of all, we need to build community support around those changes.
Mr. Pumphrey?
This question is the one that made me decide to run for the planning board. Looking through the information about the planning board on the website, the Nantucket community website, I see it stated very clearly that the duties of planning board members are to review the subdivisions and the various permits that are brought before it. Unfortunately, I'm not able to hop on a white horse and wield a sword to make affordable housing happen. I agree with David, again, that we must, as a town, as a community, as an island, come together and make the affordable housing happen ourselves. That way we can control it, and we don't have to depend on the kindness of strangers.
I do not.
Another question from the panel?
Zoning articles. They bring a lot of contention at town meeting. Some people's eyes glaze over. Some people's blood starts to boil. And other people are hoping for a Christmas day. This year there's 26 articles, I believe, of zoning changes. Takes up more than half the warrant. What can we do to make zoning something that we enjoy rather than dread at town meeting?
We'll start with Mr. Iverson this time.
I strongly believe when it comes to voting for any zoning changes at town meeting, that every member of the community should first educate themselves about the different zoning districts. And there's an acid test. Is this zoning change best for us as a community, or is it best for an individual? If it's best for us, for a community, it should be a yes vote. If it's best for an individual, I say no. Thank you.
Mr. Pumphrey?
Sorry, could you repeat the question for me, please?
I doubt it. I'll leave out the humor.
Okay.
What can we do to make zoning articles more welcome at town meeting?
Well, I think a sense of humor is exactly what we do need. The one meeting of the planning board that I did attend in January to make sure that I wasn't just setting myself up to be a noble martyr, the one thing that struck me is the desire, the schemes to pimp my own lot, you know? It's like, I want to do this, my neighbor did it, so now I want to do it. And I think one of the responsibilities of the planning board is to sort of hold the line, much like the tubes out in Sconset. You know, we have to keep going back to the base message of what's in place, and then if there's going to be debate about what's in place, then make it very public and get as many people as possible to participate in the discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Rector, same question.
Handing out prizes? I don't know. Maybe a zoning grid I'm glad you brought the humor in. It's really important. I mean, these are serious issues, but we need to take a little bit easier look at things. You have to remember, too, there's a number of different articles that come before us. They're either technical in nature at times. We've recognized that something wasn't quite right. There's initiatives that are consistent with the master plan that we've rolled out. And the third one are citizens articles. And those are maybe the trickiest of them all, because you've got someone, and I love that democratic process. Anyone can come before us and propose the ability to do something. I would never want to lose sight of that. That's such an important thing. This is the concept of who we are in New England and zoning and democratic principles. So it's not easy to work with those articles, and again, you have to deal with things in terms of both fact and the law. There are times, and even if you deny something, there are times when you've got to be able to make a finding and support why did you not support it as well, too, because that's just as fundamental an answer. But I'm a very big believer people should have the opportunity to be able to present themselves to that process and make their best case.
Okay, the first audience member question is a big one. One of the responsibilities of the Planning Board and the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission is to update the town's comprehensive master plan. What do you hope to see in the next generation of this master plan? And we'll begin with Mr. Pumphrey.
I would like to see the emphasis on land conservation, creation of vest pocket parks. I'd like to see our island home built elsewhere and that land turned into a public park where children can play. And I think that the emphasis should be on more green and fewer shingles.
Mr. Rector, same question.
Great. So when we talk about the comprehensive plan, which happened in around 2003, 2004, I have to say, my God, that was one of the most abysmal failures I've ever sat through, and I was surprised. Lesson learned from it, though, one of the things that never happened is we never made the outreach to the community. We did the master plan to try to stay within the conformity of what really should happen under a planning board. And I'm proud to say that we even took it a step forward, brought it to town meeting, and it passed almost unanimously. That's a very strong signal to me. The problem with the comprehensive plan, too, no teeth behind it. It is strictly an advisory policy. More often than not, a lot of the linchpins inside of that are really through the responsibility of other boards. Select Board has a tremendous responsibility to that. But can you tell another board that they have to do something? It doesn't happen. So I like where we're at with the master plan. It does have the ability to have regulatory process. We're going to be looking at it again as soon as the decennial census is done, which I think is an important turn point for things. If people want to try to talk about the comprehensive master plan, I'd love to have that conversation, because that's more than 60 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Iverson.
I think it's important going forward to really address the big issues we're having right now in the comprehensive plan. Traffic, road congestion, affordable housing. These are all very important issues that need to be dealt with and should be written into the master plan. We need to look at the master plan that was written in '03, take it apart, look at it, see what worked, what didn't work, and take positive steps to resolve the biggest issues we have now.
Thank you. Next question. How would you encourage affordable housing through zoning without solely increasing supply? Begin with Mr. Rector.
Well, that's kind of a tough one, I'll admit. Affordable housing is kind of a creature unto itself. Could you repeat that back for me?
How would you encourage affordable housing through zoning without solely increasing supply?
I think here we go again. We've kind of answered that question through doing multifamily units, doing secondary, tertiary dwellings, as I said, accessory units. Those are the, and again, Steve Welch's article, here we go one more time with the covenant. It's time, you know, we're always looking at how do we increase that toolbox. One of the things I will tell you is probably on a monthly basis, I make sure I meet with Tucker Holland, because that's an important moment to be able to look at and see what's happening out with what we're doing in the community. One thing I will tell you at this point, you should take a lot of joy in this, is that other communities are very jealous of what we've done with our zoning initiatives here. They're turning to us at times saying, we should have thought about that. How did you accomplish that? So I want to say, I'm going to try to maintain an open mind. We keep looking at things and seeing what else is going to be available to us through state legislature and programs that are pushed forward with that as well, too. And boy, if any of you have any great ideas out there, give me a call. I'm always willing to listen. Thank you.
Okay, same question, Mr. Iverson.
I mean, I think clearly we're going to have to come up with some new ideas and think out of the box here. You know, whether it's trading density for affordable houses, if we have projects that are dense, that we work with them with the density they want to try to figure out how to get some affordable units out of them. Again, Steve Welch's article, I think that it's going to take the community as a whole to really brainstorm and think beyond what we're doing now to make it work.
And Mr. Pumphrey.
I view the area around the Stop and Shop as a de facto urbanized area, an urbanized zone, and there could be financial incentives, perhaps tax incentives, both pro and con. So maybe a decimation tax on bulldozing virgin acreage would encourage people to build affordable housing on the site of the fire station. I like that idea. I bring some ideas with me, but again, since the purpose, the primary function of the planning board is to review, all I can do is talk these things up and ask questions and discuss them with my colleagues on the board. But I would like to suggest perhaps mandating that parking spaces be provided for any building that goes up in that urbanized area. That's based on my experience living in Madrid for 8 years. And the parking for each building is mandated to be underground. So instead of paving over Paradise, we can put up playgrounds for the children instead of asphalt parking spaces.
Thank you. Next question from a member of the audience. Please comment on the proposed Surfside Commons project, specifically your opinion on what the planning board has ruled, and in your opinion on this project when it comes before the planning board. We'll begin with Mr. Iverson.
That's kind of a confusing question. Do they mean the ZBA?
I'll read it again.
I gotcha.
Specifically, your opinion on what the planning board has ruled and your opinion on this project when it comes before the planning board.
So that project's a 40B project, and I feel that the planning board's hands in a lot of ways were probably tied when it came to any ruling on that. I think that really the main body on this project is the ZBA. I think they're doing a great job, the best they can. I am opposed to it personally. I think the density is far beyond anything we have in that area, by almost double in some instances. I think the stress, the continued stress it's going to put on our infrastructure is really putting our community in an unsafe place as far as mostly sewer and water and traffic. So I am against the project. And it's, to add, it really doesn't represent a meaningful amount of affordable units on our SHI list.
Thank you. Mr. Pumphrey.
We're not talking about Surfside Crossing, we're talking about Surfside Common.
That's what the card says.
Okay, because I don't know that community, and never having sat on the planning board, I'm unfamiliar with any rulings that were made. But again, since the primary purpose of the planning board is to review, perhaps having another building inspector to go around and see that these construction people are carrying out their job correctly. I think that we really need to keep a close eye on what's being done. At the planning board meeting that I attended in January, there seemed to be a very laissez-faire attitude about bundles of wire that shouldn't be, electrical wires and fittings not being dealt with in the prescribed manner. So I would say that the planning board, although it doesn't have the right to enforce, can certainly suggest that enforcement be undertaken. And I think enforcement, if Nantucket becomes known for strict enforcement of its building codes, it might discourage some of these off-island speculators.
Thank you. Your response, Mr. Rector.
I'm going to assume we're talking about the 40B process at Surfside. So as much as the planning board may be thought of as doing something, this is strictly before the ZBA. The planning board, as with other agencies like the HDC, are allowed to put in a comment letter, and we certainly did comment. 3 things we talked about out of many were decreasing the density of the unit. The infrastructure needed major correction inside of that. And the 3rd thing was we also felt that we needed more affordable units in that process as well, too. If anyone's very curious, I will tell you this is a public document. It's available for review. Just because we submit a letter, just because the HDC submits a letter, doesn't mean the ZBA has to listen to us. It's a letter. They can either take stock out of what we've put in or say, thank you very much for the comments, but we're going to move to a different process. And that's true for every 40B that happens on the island. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have to move on to 1-minute closing statements in reverse order of the opening statements. So we'll start with Mr. Pumphrey.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify in my comment about the building inspector. When I said we needed another building inspector, I meant a second building inspector, because I know the man who's on the job is doing everything he can. I would like to see him have help, because given the pace of development, am I allowed air quotes, development on the island, I think that we really need to ride herd on the developers and make sure that they comply absolutely and strictly with the regulations on Nantucket. I would close by saying that I think small can be beautiful. When friends come to visit me, I take them out to Sconset. I just went for the walk on the bluff last week with a dear friend. I didn't know that I could go behind the little cottages that I love so much. And a friend has lent me a book called Walking Nantucket, which I plan to explore. But my point is that small is beautiful, and it doesn't have to be uniform and boring. We don't have to put up boring units, hopefully near the Stop and Shop, where people can walk to school, they can walk to the market. There are plenty of services there. It is a de facto new town. And again, from my experience living abroad, and I worked when I was living abroad for an architectural firm as an advisor on English language. and I got to know a lot about building projects. And my point is that we could develop affordable housing. It doesn't have to be boring, but it can be small and modest and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing statement, Mr. Rector.
So thank you to the Civic League, Tim Matten, Melissa, and lastly to the audience for coming to this event and those who are going to listen to this broadcast. Wow, 60 seconds to discuss and solve major, complex issues. Boy, how I want that world to work. I promise I'll give you the more than 60 seconds. Please feel free to call or reach me on Facebook. In closing, we must continue to plan carefully so the needs of the present are met without compromising the hopes and goals of future generations. The future can be daunting, but I see a future to be approached with optimism. Our founding father, Benjamin Franklin, said, "If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail." Safeguarding Nantucket's future is crucial. I respect and listen to all island voices. I work hard to be a catalyst in planning for the very important future of our island. The process of planning is complex, but I will always be there to assist you with this challenging process. Again, thank you. My name is Barry Rector, and I'm going to ask for your vote for me for the Planning Board on April 9th. Thank you all.
Thank you, and thanks to all three candidates for Planning Board.
Mr. Wow.
Pardon me.
Maybe you get 2 minutes for that.
Penalty seconds. Hi, if elected on April 9th, I can promise the community that I will work diligently to resolve some of everyone's fears and issues that's what's going on around here right now. I promise to really do my best to draw the community into the discussion, to try to find ways to sustainably control our growth in a way that benefits our community. Look into ways to solve our traffic issues, alternative modes of transportation. Parking is a big issue that we need to resolve here. So vote for me on the 9th, and I will do my best, I promise.
And now it's time to thank the three candidates. And would the two candidates for Land Bank Commission please step up?
You got my vote.
Good show, sir. Thanks, David. Good show. Thank you.
Remember to talk one inch before the light so they can hear you on the TV.
John, have you had a chance to say hello yet? Where would you like me? Over here, over there?
Over here. And this mic is extremely directional, so it talks 1 inch right in front, otherwise I won't hear you.
And I don't hit any buttons?
You don't hit any buttons. Wait, yours is not on. There you go. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, folks, we'll begin with a 2-minute opening statement from each of the two candidates, beginning with incumbent John Stackpole.
Hi, I'm John Stackpole. I'm running for Land Bank. I appreciate all the support I've received in the past, and I hope I'll have your support this year. We've done a lot of exciting things on the Land Bank. We've opened the park up, the Reyes Pond property out in Pulpus Road. We're doing a new park and a new playground out on Old South Road. And we are having several negotiations right now with people to buy property that will enhance our properties quite a bit. So I thank you very much for your past support. I've been on the land bank for 15 years, and I enjoyed it very much, and thank you.
Thank you. Mark Donato.
I wish to thank the Civic League for hosting this forum. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to express my thoughts publicly on the wonderful job the Land Bank has done, and to have an opportunity to bring forth new ideas and answer questions on the future of the Land Bank. But first, a little background information. I've been a citizen of Nantucket for 40 years. I have a Bachelor of Arts from Arizona State University. I have owned and operated 4 businesses on the island, most notably the Sconset Market. In the course of my 40 years in business, I've had much relevant experience. I've worked with countless employees, purchased and sold properties, provided employee housing, worked with town licensing, building, and health departments, and happily paid the 2% land bank fees along the way. I am a poor golfer and a member of Sankaty Head. Therefore, I have no conflict of interest regarding any future decisions in the Myacomet Golf Club. This is my first time to run for public office, but I have a long history of serving on island boards. I was president of the Sconset Civic Association for 2 terms. I was vice president of the Chamber of Commerce for 2 terms. I worked with the Codfish Park Committee, which, with collaboration with the Land Bank, brought to fruition a project that I fought for many years, and that has inspired me to seek this office and to also follow ongoing projects that are going on with the Land Bank. I witnessed the positive collaboration between what organizations can do. It was a proud moment when the Land Bank purchased Skinner's Golf Course and the Sconset Trust simultaneously purchased the abutting property. I've always been passionate about nature. I walk the Land Bank properties religiously year-round. Although priority of the Land Bank is acquisition of open space, the other 2 missions, recreation and agricultural, are of equal importance. I would like to see added attention to the present infrastructure of existing properties to increase public use and enjoyment. Increasing trails, widening paths, proper signage, and tick remediation are improvements I feel would be beneficial. Of course, if you build it, but no one knows about it, it will be underutilized. So I would recommend an awareness campaign for both visitors and residents. In short, I have a long history and a great love for Nantucket, and I would appreciate the chance to apply my experience and contribute my ideas to the important work that the Land Bank does. Thank you.
Thank you. And a reminder to members of the audience, if you have a question for the candidates for Land Bank Commission, simply raise your hand and we'll get an index card to you. And now we'll go on to questions from our 2 panelists. Who wishes to begin?
Thank you. The Land Bank's mission is to acquire, hold, and manage key open spaces, provide waterfront access, preserve scenic views, protect ecological resources, promote local agriculture, and create outdoor recreational opportunities for residents and visitors alike. But with less and less open space left to purchase, I'd like to know what your vision is for the Land Bank over the next 10 to 20 years, and should the 2% fee be changed? Why or why not?
We'll begin with Mr. Donato.
The 2% fee should not be changed, and I feel it would be very difficult for it to be changed because that's a Beacon Hill decision. I'm glad you brought this question up because I tend to agree that acquiring large open spaces is going to go at a more slow pace in the future. And that's why part of my mission is recreation, which you mentioned in your previous statement. I am definitely I have a platform of distance and signage things on the properties. Right now, when I walk out there, I'm seeing they're so underutilized, and some of it I feel is because people are a little intimidated. There's no trail sign saying it's a loop. You will end up back where you start. It does not mention what the walking time is. Is it a 20-minute walk? Is it a 60-minute walk? They're unclear whether they have the time allotted to do this or the physical capability to do this. So I would definitely like to see that part of it go forward. The increase in recreation and agriculture is definitely where I think the greater percentage of this money should go forward while we're in the transition period of acquiring larger pieces of land.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Stackpole.
Yes. The 2% fees shouldn't be changed at all. It's important money brought in. The reason we bring that money in is to maintain our properties, and we have a great deal of amount of property right now. There are smaller pieces being acquired all the time, but the prices are not down. The prices are huge, so we have to deal with that. And as far as the agriculture, and we are putting in an orchard now. We're working on toward that goal. But I think that in the next 10 years or 20 years, our money will be spent maintaining our properties rather than purchasing any.
I don't. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Madden?
Following Melissa's lead earlier in the meeting, I'm going to disclose that I'm related to one of these fine gentlemen by marriage, sitting here at the table. I hope to use it as a tool to get out of sitting here tonight. But Mr. Morrison explained to me that I wouldn't be able to do it because I'm related to half the island through marriage. So with that being said, I would like to know what skill set you think you could bring to the commission or do already bring to the commission that makes you a valuable member of that commission. Oftentimes, commissioners don't agree. I served on the Land Bank Commission, and you have to convince people to do certain things, or a certain piece of property should be a priority. What skill set do you have that you think will benefit the commission? Thank you.
Okay, first respondent, Mr. Stackpole.
Well, I've been on the commission now for 15-plus years, worked very well with the commissioners, and you're right, we don't always agree. But we generally come through after much discussion, and we get the job done. We don't fight in public. We keep our things quiet. We don't go out and advertise what we're doing when we're negotiating. We just sit down and we talk and we talk and we get it done, and we decide which properties are the best for the island and which properties couldn't be that good. So then we say no. But we work well together. Thank you.
Mr. Donato.
Well, I believe I bring some of the same skills as John has just mentioned. I have sat on a number of boards, and on most of the boards I have actually ascended to the presidency or the vice presidency of these boards. So I believe I worked well with the members of all of my boards, and would continue to do so. I also think I have a strong set as when I fixate on a point, I'm going to bring it home. I'm a closer, and I'm willing to work with boards, but if I think I see the right path ahead of me, I'm going to push for it, and along with bringing information and talking with people. But I've done that very successfully in the past.
Okay, thank you. Another question from our panelists?
Yes, thank you. As our Nantucket community grows, the need for a variety of recreational opportunities grows with it. Many have asked for a true community center that houses activities for adults of all ages, not just for children. How do you see the land bank playing a role in developing something like this in the future?
Mr. Donato.
Well, I'm not totally familiar with how the land bank is handcuffed by the laws that were passed down from up in Beacon Hill, but it's my understanding that that does not fit into the mission statement to build a large building on the property. I'll be interested to see John's follow-up on this. I do truly hope that could be a mission statement that we could fulfill, and I would like to do something like that. In the meantime, not knowing if that is possible, I just would like to. You say we need to increase things for the community to do, so I would like to do that. I would like to do the increase of usage. I think that saying a statement like everyone on Nantucket goes and enjoys our beautiful beaches, that statement should now be people enjoy our beautiful interior walks and all of our conservation lands. So I would like to see more interior improvements done on the properties. For instance, we have some frontage on some of these properties, on Hummock Pond and all. There's a couple of dilapidated old docks that are sinking in place there. Bring those back up and bring them into fruition, whether it be for kayak experiences. Maybe we can get water recreation now for young and old. maybe just using it as a fishing dock. But this would certainly solve this short-term problem.
Mr. Stackpole?
We are not in the process of, or in the business of creating recreation, of indoor recreation. We voted recently that we are very much in favor of outdoor recreation, and we are going to focus on that. And we will, and we are working on that very hard and very timely. But we have voted that we will not do any indoor recreation, and that would preclude any type of community center or such. It's not allowed in our act.
Okay, do we have another question from our panelists?
If we have one from the audience, we can go there, or I'll be happy to ask another one. But do we have any from the audience?
Have got one from the audience. Would or could the land bank give land to an entity to build an inexpensive housing only for workforce? And we'll start with Mr. Stackpole.
The short answer is no. We are not in the housing business. We have acquired houses before, and we've moved them off property. We have retained a few for employee housing, but basically we're not in the housing business.
Mr. Donato?
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy. I'm in total agreement with John. Providing housing and cutting off parcels outside of the mission statement of the land bank is just not doable.
Okay, do we have another question?
Looking back over the years, John, there'll be some decisions that the land bank has made that you actually ultimately didn't agree with. Perhaps you can share one of those. And perhaps, Mark, you can tell us some of the decisions that perhaps the land bank has made that you would have felt differently about.
Okay, first respondent, Mr. Donato.
I don't ever want to bring negativity into this, but there was certainly some of the handlings with the golf course I would have probably done differently. I think they came out with a good result, and I'm very pleased that it all did, that there did need to be a new golf course and all. I thought it was possibly mishandled at the very beginning when the figures got high and talk on the street was getting out of control about it all that. There was an issue a couple of years ago where the land bank director allowed some trees to be topped to allow a view for one of the neighbors. And I would have certainly wished that the land bank commission had stepped in at that time and squashed that thing. I guess that's the answer to my question.
All right, Mr. Stackpole.
In 15 years I've been on the board, I can say that there are a few decisions made that I wasn't in favor of, but I won't go into that right now. It's not important. The important thing is that we work well together. We cause a lot of property to be purchased and used and enjoyed by the people of Nantucket, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Thank you. How specifically does the land bank currently support local agriculture as it states in its mission? And do you have any ideas or policies you'd advocate for in this area going forward?
Okay, we'll begin with Mr. Stackpole.
Yeah, I'd like to see more agriculture done. We started a potato farm a short time ago out behind by Mycomet Pond, and the neighbors got so up in arms that we had to cease doing that. So we have now a community farm. We don't get much recognition for it, but it's our property, and we're working well with them. They're doing a great job out there, and I think that they could use more land, but we have to have the request before us before we can act. We don't go out publicly and build the properties until we are asked to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Donato.
I'm pleased to hear that they go by a request situation to expand that, but the agricultural thing that's taking place out there is very impressive, and sustainable has a play in that, as well as just independent farmers. I believe they have maxed out, and there is a great need to expand that. And I'm hoping that's in the plans in the future from the land bank. I think a really nice thing to do would be to start actually doing enclosed greenhouses so that farming and agriculture takes place in the wintertime as well. I like the ideas of these orchard farms and potato farms. I hope they pursue that as well. But in terms of the individual farmers that are taking place out there under the sustainability or under this private thing, yeah, I encourage it wholeheartedly, and I hope we expand it rapidly in the future.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
All right, it's now time for 1-minute closing statements from our candidates, and we'll begin with Mr. Donato.
I wish to thank the citizens of Nantucket for hearing me today, and I'm thankful for all this island has allowed me to experience. I would also like to thank John for his dedication and years of service. I'm in awe of what the Land Bank has done. I would like more people to be aware and enjoy what the Land Bank offers. My platform stresses infrastructure and publicity so that recreation becomes more accessible to all. I believe that I would bring new outlooks and fresh ideas to the table. That could improve and enhance our existing properties. I don't have all the answers, but I am a quick study. I'm a hard worker. I'm up to the challenge. In fact, I'm excited about it. I'm recently retired, and I have the time and energy to devote to this position. In closing, we are blessed to have the Land Bank, and it would be an honor to serve Nantucket, and I ask for your vote and support.
Thank you. Mr. Stackpole, closing statement.
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for the support they've offered me over the past 15 years and more. I guess I started about 17 or 18 years ago. I want to say that we work well together as a board. We are well aware of what's happening within the community. We like to sit and discuss properties, and we make a decision upon that. So I thank you very much for your support in the past, and I'll continue to do a good job, and thank you.
Well, many thanks to our two candidates and to all of you.